Protagonist Pub. My name is Tammy, and this is where characters gather. And today, what are we going to do? We are going to prove that I'm, touched in the head. I don't know a better way to describe it. So, today, I am going to give myself a personal goal, unrelated to the 25 and 25 that Dave chose. There are 10 books that he didn't pick that I made sure were, within his sight. He still overlooked them, and I want to read them. And so I have picked 10 books. It was almost 20 before I forced myself to whittle it down to 10. Because as you will see, some of these books are not tiny. Because obviously I thought I didn't have enough large books in the 25 and 25 list. I thought I'd give myself some more. So I'm going to timestamp these into category, and to the surprise of none, I'm going to tell you up front that historical fiction is going to be the largest category. Okay, let's do contemporary. Both of these are going to be new to me authors. First up would be Maeve Binchy, Finding Frankie. These were both library bookshop finds, and I will read you the back of this one. Finding Frankie is a story about unconventional families, relationships which aren't quite what they seem, and the child at the heart of everyone's lives. Baby Frankie is born into an unusual family. Her mother is desperate to find someone to take care of her child, and she doesn't have much time. Noel doesn't seem to be the most promising of fathers, but despite everything, he could well be Frankie's best hope. As for Lisa, she is prepared to give up everything for the man she loves. Surely, he's going to love her back. And Moira is having none of it. She knows what's right and has the power to change the course of Frankie's life. But Moira is hiding secrets of her own. I really, really, really want to read this. I've wanted to read her for a while. It's going to count as a 25 or a Read My Life book. And this was first published in 1998, I believe. And it's not the only one I have of her on my shelf. I have one other, but it was a collection of short stories, and I have enough short stories this year to satisfy me. So, it's 422 pages. It's not small text. It's well spaced. So that's what I'm going to tell myself anyway. And the second one that's contemporary is My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry by Frederick Bachman. I have read nothing by him. I've heard nothing but high praise. And this one isn't that long. It's one of the shorter ones on the list, I believe. Yeah. It's 370. No, it's less than that, actually. 370 pages. I just think it sounds fabulous. So I'll read you the back. Elsa is 7 years old and different. Her grandmother is 77 years old and crazy. As in standing on the balcony, firing paintball guns at strangers crazy. She is also Elsa's best and only friend. At night, Elsa takes refuge in her grandmother's stories in the land of Almost Awake and the kingdom of Mimas, where everybody is different and nobody needs to be normal. When Elsa's grandmother dies and leaves behind a series of letters apologizing to the people she's wronged, Elsa's greatest adventure begins. Her grandmother's instructions lead her to an apartment building full of misfits, monsters, attack dogs, and old crones, but also to the truth about fairy tales and kingdoms and a grandmother like no other. My grandmother asked me to tell you she's sorry is told with the same comic accuracy and beating heart as Frederick Bachman's best-selling debut novel, A Man Called Ove, which I need to read. It is a love story about life and death and one of the most important human rights, the right to be different. So, I'm interested. We shall see. I've heard nothing but great praise for his books. I've heard absolutely nothing but overwhelming praise for A Man Called Ove. This was published in 2013 in, I believe, Swedish. It was translated into English in 2015. And I am very interested, and I love the cover. So, unsurprising. Okay, next, let's do fantasy. Blawhead, this is the opening book of the Pendragon cycle. I wanted to read this Arthurian book last year. I have not. I know Chrissy has read it recently and loved it. I very much want to read this. And I love this cover. I love the fact that all the books are listed on the cover. Unfortunately, these are very hard to find. I can't find Merlin in this release, which is Booktube, which is why I've been hesitating. But hesitation is over. I want to read this one this year. It's not super long, and I say that, and it's over 500 pages. So, it's half the length of a Sanderson novel, so it's not super long, right? And then next up would be The Masked City by Genevieve Cogman. I believe this is book 2 in the Invisible Library series. And again, it's another series that is not, it's book 2 because I have a bookmark in here. I started this last year and I wasn't in the mood, but I really want to read this. I really enjoyed the first book, which was The Invisible Library. This is alternate reality, steampunk, Victorian fantasy about librarians. I loved the first book. Cannot wait to read the second book, so I'll read you the back of this. Working in an alternate version of Victorian London, Librarian Spy Irene has settled into a routine, collecting important fiction from the mysterious library and blending in nicely with the local culture. But when her apprentice Kai, a dragon of royal descent, is kidnapped by the Fae, her carefully crafted undercover operation begins to crumble. Kai's abduction could incite a conflict between the forces of chaos and order that would devastate all worlds and all dimensions. To keep humanity from getting caught in the crossfire, Irene will have to team up with a local Fae leader to travel deep into the version of Venice filled with dark magic, strange coincidences, and a perpetual celebration of Carnival, and save her friend before he becomes the first casualty of a catastrophic war. But navigating the tumultuous landscape of Fae politics will take more than Irene's book smarts and fast talking. To ward off Armageddon, she might have to sacrifice everything she holds dear. I need to know. And since she's going to Venice, where Carnival is in perpetual celebration, I should probably read this, for Fat Tuesday, which I believe this year is in March. So it will give me a breather. And the first one was a fast read. So, okay. And that brings us to, dun, 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 no surprise. Historical fiction. And ladies and gentlemen, let me just tell you that with the exception of one of these books, none of them are skinny. So this one I am going to buddy read with Lou. It will be a reread for Lou. It will be an attempt for me. I've tried this book repeatedly and have repeatedly DNF'd it. And I still keep it on my shelves because part of me says I should be able to read this. And Lou tells me that if I get past the first 50 to 100 pages, it picks up from there. So I haven't even been able to watch the BBC miniseries of it. So that is Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel. This is a set during the reign of Henry VIII. And I will read you the inside flap. In the ruthless arena of King Henry VIII's court, only one man dares to gamble his life to win the king's favor and ascend to the heights of political power. England is a heartbeat from disaster. If the king dies without a male heir, the country could be destroyed by a civil war. Henry VIII wants to annul his marriage of 20 years and marry Anne Boleyn. The Pope and Catholic Europe oppose him. The king's quest for freedom destroys his advisor, the brilliant Cardinal Wolsey, and creates a years-long power struggle between the church and the crown. Into this impasse steps Thomas Cromwell, a wholly original man, both a charmer and a bully, an idealist and an opportunist, astute in reading people, and a demon of energy. Cromwell is a consummate politician, hardened by years abroad and his personal losses. Implacable in his ambition and self-taught, it is said that he can recite the entire New Testament from memory, knows Europe's major languages, and speaks poetry freely. Cromwell soon becomes the country's most powerful figure after Henry. When Henry pursues his desire to marry Anne Boleyn, it is Cromwell who breaks the deadlock and allows the king's heart's desire. But Henry is volatile, one day tender, one day murderous. Cromwell helps him break the opposition. Thomas More, the man for all seasons. Catherine the Queen, his daughter Princess Mary. But what will be the price of his triumph? Again, this is a period of English history I absolutely love. It is a book I should be so eager to read that it's amazing I haven't. So, time will tell. Lou, please keep me on track. Okay, next up. I got this, I want to say last year, but it may actually be the year before. No, I think it was last year. That is The Marriage of Lions by Elizabeth Chadwick. This is medieval historical fiction. In fact, it takes place in England. 1238 is when it begins. I love Elizabeth Chadwick, as you know. I am very much looking forward to this. And this one is, just over 500 pages as well. I love this period of history. So, yeah, I need to read it. Okay, and this was a book outlet purchase last 2023. That is The Brewer of London by Karen Brooks. I love this cover. I absolutely love this cover. And at 800 pages, this is not a tiny read. I don't recall reading anything by this author. Let me see. No, I have not read anything by this author. She has a backlist here. But I have to know. I'll read you the back. Set in 15th century England, an unforgettable tale from a brilliant woman's defiance, courage, and ingenuity. From the author of The Locksmith's Daughter and The Chocolate Maker's Wife. In 1405, the daughter of a wealthy merchant, Anneke Sheldrake, suddenly finds her family bankrupt when her father's ship is swept away at sea. Forced to find a way to provide for herself and her siblings, Anneke turns to her late mother's family business, brewing ale. Armed with her mother's recipes, Aneki makes a bold deal with her father's aristocratic employer, putting her home and family at risk. Thanks to her fierce determination, Aneki's brew wins a following and begins to turn a profit. But her rise threatens some in her community, and those closest to her are left to pay the price. As Aneki slowly pieces her life together again, she finds an unlikely ally in a London brothel owner. Determined to reclaim her livelihood and her family, Aneki vows not to let anyone stand in the way of her forging her own destiny. So, I have not read anything by her. It is published by a major publishing house. And it released in 2014. So, in theory, it's free from nonsense. But I really need to know this one. I need to know. Okay, following the need to know, again, a book I should have read last year. The Evening and the Morning by Ken Follett. This is in chronological order, not publication order, chronological order, the first book in the Kingsbridge series. And it opens up in 997. I think it closes in 889. No, 1006. 1007. Closes in 1007. And it is just shy of 900 dense pages of not quite mass market paperback. But I really want to read this series. I really want to read them in chronological order. And thus, I need to start with this book. And it does dovetail nicely with episodic reading that, goes through the history of part of England. So it's not outside the realm of possibility. Okay, so the last two books. Okay, next up are the last two on this list. First up would be The First Princess of Wales by Karen Harper. I love Karen Harper. I love this cover. It's absolutely stunning. It's just absolutely stunning. So I will read you the back. The daughter of a disgraced earl, she matched wits with a prince. It is the 14th century, the height of the medieval age. And at the court of King Edward III of England, chivalry is loudly praised, while treachery runs rampant. When the lovely and high-spirited Joan of Kent is sent to this politically charged court, she is woefully unprepared for the underhanded maneuverings of her peers. Determined to increase the breadth of his rule, the king will use any means necessary to gain control of France, including manipulating his own son, Edward, Prince of Wales. Joan plots to become involved with the prince to scandalize the royal family, for she has learned that they engineered her father's downfall and death. But what begins as a calculated strategy soon, to Joan's surprise, grows into love. When Joan learns that Edward returns her feelings, she is soon fighting for her own. For how can she love the man that ruined her family? And if she does, what will be the cost? Filled with scandal, court intrigue, and prominent figures of the medieval age, The First Princess of Wales has at its center a wonderful love story, which is all the more remarkable because it is true. I cannot wait to dive into this book. I cannot wait to dive into this book. And even though it is just over 600 pages, I need to know. I need to know. Okay. And last on this list was a birthday gift from Amanda, who, by the way, I stole this video idea from, so thank you, Amanda. And it will help me get these books read this year. And that is The Medicine Woman of Galveston by Amanda Secondor. I have never read anything from this author, but I love this cover. And I will read you the back. A powerful, heart-wrenching novel that immerses readers in its Galveston, Texas setting, where a woman doctor who has taken refuge in a traveling medicine show battles to survive and to save others during the Great Hurricane of 1900, the nation's worst natural disaster to date. Once a trailblazer in the field of medicine, Dr. Tucci Hatherley hasn't touched a scalpel or stethoscope since she made a fatal mistake in the operating theater. Instead, she works in a corset factory, striving to earn enough to support her disabled son. When even that livelihood is threatened, Tusha is left with one option: to join a wily, charismatic showman named Huey and become part of his traveling medicine show. Her medical license lends the show a pretense of credibility. But the cures and tonics Tusha is forced to peddle are little more than purgatives and bathwater. Loathing the duplicity, even as she finds uneasy kinship with the other misfit performers, Tusha vows to leave as soon as her debts are paid and start a new life with her son, if Huey will ever let her go. When the show reaches Galveston, Texas, Tusha tries to break free from Huey, only to be pulled even deeper into his schemes. But there is a far greater reckoning ahead, as a September storm becomes a devastating hurricane that will decimate the Gulf Coast and challenge Tusha to recover her belief in medicine, in the goodness of others, and in herself. If you live in Texas, you know how badly that hurricane of 1900 devastated the Galveston area. And it is talked about to this day, 125 years later. But I need to know. And this is a beautiful copy with deckled edges. And it is by far not by far, it is the shortest book on this list by a couple of pages. So it's 363. And this is a very recent publication. This is published last year by Kensington. So hopefully it was kept free of nonsense. So those are the 10 books I want to read in 2025 that did not make it on today's 2020, 25 and 2025 list, and that, if I am not careful, will get lost on my shelves. I could have chosen probably an easy 20 more books to add to this list, but that, at that point would just have been so unwieldy that I never would have gotten everything read. So you notice there is no specific Catholic fiction on that list, and that was intentional because that gets covered in other videos throughout the year. And I, read at least one Catholic fiction a year, or one Catholic fiction a month. So that isn't, a challenge for me to get read. So, okay. So what are 10 books that you are looking forward to reading this year that, didn't land on your 25 and 25 list, or haven't, you've been inspired by other readers to pick up and try? Let me know in the comments down below. Like and subscribe, and I will see you here next time at the Protagonist Pub.